Thank you, Ronald, for these very friendly words. If I would not know this person, I would say it's a horrifying presentation with all these books and pretending to know things from agriculture to Christology. But it is not so horrifying because it is only a kind of productivity in showing what Steiner brought to us. So the mystery is not the author, but the scientists of the invisible. So let me say it is a big honor and also a joy to be with you at the beginning of this year. And it's doubled in my case when I see Ronald's face and I remember my stay in Sacramento and also in Long Island when we met us first. And it is always related to Jean Gallagly, who was long time leading Steiner books and visited me 15 years ago or even more and saying, I would like to bring your books to the United States. And I said to Jean, which of the books? And he said, all of them. And this was a starting production also, and it's going on with John Scott Legg and the faculty now of Steiner Books, and he did 2 books for the Christmas conference from the Ita Wegman Institute or from myself. So it's a continuing working and also loving relationship to the United States and to our common striving in deeper understanding of what Rudolf Steiner brought. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, the Faust branch, and the second one is that we just come out of the Holy Nights, and maybe you heard that 1,000 people gathered in the big hall of the Goetheanum, and it was a deep experience again to be on the site, to be there, and to partly to try to confront the past, the present, and the future. And I had also the special honors for some evening lectures there, and now we are in the new year with this totally open future for anthroposophy, but also for the world. And that the idea came from the branch to give a lecture today, tonight. For us it is tonight, for you it is partly tomorrow or in the afternoon, about the karma lectures. And it was by Sandra, it was named that the official starting of this lecture course in Dornach was on the 16th of February 1924, and most of you probably will know the opening sentence when Dr. Steiner said, I would now like to begin to speak to you about the condition and laws of human destiny, which we have come to call karma. And a little bit later he said, I want to get serious about looking at karma. And he described that the main intention of these lectures is to deeper understanding of a fundamental and complicated law of the world. And the whole cycle ended on the 23rd of September in Dornach. So what he opened there on the 16th of February lasted over 7 months until the 23rd of September. And he gave also these karma lectures in several other cities. And I want just to name some of the cities, because the interesting thing is that in some of these cities where he gave the lectures, he brought new people in his lectures. So he went a little bit to cities where there was a certain spirit of an individuality partly present. So in Stuttgart, he first talked about the destiny, the karma of Schiller, or in Prague about Amos Comenius, or in Bern, in Switzerland, about Pestalozzi. And in Paris, he unveiled, in a way, the destiny of Victor Hugo, Voltaire, and another French philosopher, Lévy. And in London, he talked about Lawrence Oliphant and also about Swedenborg. So in a way, these cities, those places, they played an important role. even if Dr. Steiner said that most of the content of the Karma lectures is old, so he'd kept it in his mind, he revealed it in those cities in this year 24. And also he mentioned quite often in these lectures that the Karma theme was from the beginning of his anthroposophical activity the leading thought, we can say, the key, but that the Theosophical Society at the beginning, when he entered into his job there or took the position of the leader of the German section of the Theosophical Society it was in autumn 92, he wanted to start with a cycle of lectures about practical karma exercises. But he said people didn't want to hear it in a way. So he wanted to bring the theme with an inner impulsiveness to the theosophical movement, but people were not prepared, were not mature. And then he had to withdraw the theme. I think most of you will have read these lines of Steiner. They are surprising in a way, because when we go in Steiner's books or in the lectures he gave, the destiny theme, the karma theme was an imminent theme. I mean, it was an extraordinary important theme from theosophy, I mean the book, till occult science, and in many, many of the lectures. But anyway, Dr. Steiner said the real revelation of karma he had to keep in himself until the Christmas conference. So after the Christmas conference, there was a different condition or precondition, and now he could start. And this was an enormous start, mid of February, and then March, April, and June, and July, and August, and September. And sometimes he said also, he mentioned that it was a difficult decision to bring those things. But he said he could not avoid anymore. But in some of the Karma lectures, he again says, I confess I have to keep asking myself the question, should I or should I not? So it was a question of courage, but also a question of what will be the consequences for the society, for the movement, if he brings this theme. But at the end he did, and said it was the will of the spiritual world, without shyness, to go on this path. So quite a challenging theme, or let's say quite a challenging lecture course, because the theme itself was not new, but how he presented. And when I got the invitation by your branch to give a kind of lecture about this lecture cycle, I asked myself how to do it. Most of you will know these are more than 80 lectures, and how to summarize them or how to go into them. And I thought, at the end I thought I will make 3 steps tonight in my presentation. And the first step I want to underline a little bit out of these lectures, I would say the essential of Steiner's understanding and realization of destiny. We know that reincarnation and karma is a major theme in our culture now, or maybe not a major theme, but it is a real theme. But Steiner's specific understanding, also the ethic, I would say, of his understanding, I want to talk a little bit about it. And then the second part in my presentation will be about the society. Why Dr. Steiner brought these lectures after the Christmas conference. This has something to do with the future of the Anthroposophical Society and movement and the School for Spiritual Science. So I will go in the second part in this theme. And the third will be a little bit about the composition of these lectures until the 23rd of September. And then I would like to go a little bit into the last lecture as well on the 23rd of September, because this is a kind of a Platonic end. At the end stands the destiny of Plato and Steiner's teacher Carl Julius Schroer. And now we are in January, and I think it would be interesting to go deeper into these lectures until autumn. So I hope that this evening presentation is also an encouraging element to take these lectures for very serious for our study year or our meditative year. Okay, but I will start with the first point. I will call it the special nature of Dr. Steiner's understanding and realization of destiny. So for me, it was in a way astonishing when I came across in Steiner's lectures one notion where he says that the idea of reincarnation and karma will play a primary role for all cultures of the future. So a leading role, or the leading role for all cultures of the future is the idea of reincarnation and karma. But first of all, reincarnation and karma. Steiner made it clear that reincarnation is not karma, and therefore he used quite often the terminus reincarnation and karma, saying this is not the same. People who reincarnate, they must not have the ability of a karmic destiny. That means in former, very old time of evolution of mankind, human beings reincarnated, but the one life wasn't connected to the other life. This is old time, I mean pre-Christian, old time, but just to mention it, that the ability to connect the biographies, to make an interconnection was an element of the evolution of mankind. It was not a natural law. I don't want to talk about it, but Steiner talked about it, how it came in the evolution. What were the preconditions that to connect two lives or three lives or four or five? But therefore he said reincarnation and karma, not only reincarnation and not only karma. Karma is the senseful, the meaningful interconnection between reincarnated biographies. So, but this idea of reincarnation and karma will play a major decisive role for all cultures of the future. And in another sentence, Dr. Steiner said it has this idea has a reorganizational task for civilization. Reorganizational task. So I think we all feel that we have to reorganize totally our societies, I mean politics and the societies. But how to reorganize them? Probably not by a new president or the old president or presidents at all. But what could be the elements of reorganization of our societies? And Steiner said one of the leading elements for the future would be this idea. This is in a way astonishing or not. From an anthroposophical point of view, I think we can see what Steiner means, that the understanding of what is an individuality, a human being, that it's not a product of disposition and environment, but has in itself a principle of individuality and comes with a mission, as Dr. Steiner said. Every human being has a mission. It comes with a certain task, and then it's going also or after the biography with the next tasks. But this strong thought that every single human being has its own mission, this will, as Dr. Steiner said, bring a new value and dignity to human lives. And individuals, they have a clear and a significant entity. And he said this will foster a deeper respect for human beings and for social life. So it's not just an interesting thought for those who are interested in esoteric approaches, but he said, if this would be the basis of human dignity, then there will be another creation of society and also another creation of a loving capacity to the other one. So this is really an essential thought of anthroposophy in general, and gives also courage for the future, as Dr. Steiner said. And realization of this, what is the realization of the idea of reincarnation and karma? Steiner said, not only to think about this possibility, but to practice it. That means to come to another relationship to your own biography, to your own being human. In the quotations of the Karma lectures, he said, one will never experience the case that one does not agree with this karma when one has a real insight into it, because we are actually our own karma. We are actually our own karma. I don't know if Steiner would also say that this saying yes to your own karma means also catastrophes, natural catastrophes, political civilization catastrophes. But at least he's saying this kind of dissatisfaction, which was quite common at the beginning of the 20th century, this kind of this dissatisfaction, this kind of disagreement with your own biography, profession, marriage, place to live. This, as Dr. Steiner put it, is disturbing the gods in the creation of destiny. So it's maybe a certain humor also in this formulation, but not only. He's saying the deeper insight in your own biography produces or creates an agreement. As deeper as you come, you accept it more and more. There is one letter from Steiner to Ita Wegmann. It is from June 24 from Kobowitz, where he gave the course for agriculture. And they were writing about their karmic relationship, and she was she felt sad, Ita Wegmann, that they met so late in their biographies. And Steiner in his answer said, there is karma at work, and one karma that I truly wouldn't want any other way. So in a way, to accept karma, saying yes to it, this is an end result of a longer inner process, and maybe we are all at the beginning of this process to say completely yes to our own biographies. And as Ronald Koch said, I come out of a work of psychiatry or adolescence psychiatry, and so I had a lot of patience with violence experiences in their biographies, with abuse, or just growing up under very difficult social conditions. And it is not easy to say yes to your own biography, and you can't force the other one to say yes to her or his own biography. But especially in these encounters with the patients, I was quite often surprised to what extent they said at the end, yes, it's my life. They would never say, this is my preferred life, or it was wonderful. No, but to say finally yes, but this can be an end process of a long, long work. I just mentioned this because we don't talk only about esoteric development. I would say we talk about normal human development. So every human being, also without an expressed esoteric striving, stands in front of the task to say yes to their own biography. And this is a major challenge for today and for the future. And even especially if there are burdens to carry, if there are obstacles, if there are severe things, serious experiences going on, it is an end result of work, I said. But then if you get freer and more conscious in practicing your own life and biography, this really can create a will to the future. And that's what Steiner mentioned quite often. We should be more and more aware of our destiny. So doing faithful things more consciously. Interesting, faithful things, that means things we have to do. We are not completely free, but if we do them consciously, then there is doing faithful things in freedom. It seems to be a polarity, but it's not completely. More freely and more consciously. But this is not easy. But this can create a new trust, also a new trust in destiny. And so in one of the sentences of the Karma lecture, Steiner said, the way in which people acquire the conviction of reincarnation in karma will be the most important thing. So not only the idea of reincarnation and karma, but the way in which they will acquire it and how they live it. This is an important part. And then I will underline a second point in this reflection. If we go into the karma lectures of Steiner, especially after some of them, it is quite interesting that they are part of his spiritual autobiography. He tells about destinies of his teachers, school teachers. He researched them later. But this were teacher he felt very connected. And so it's interesting, he's writing the book Mein Lebensgang. In English I don't know, but his autobiography. And in the same time he's giving the Karma lectures. And we can realize more and more that the Karma lectures are part of Steiner's spiritual autobiography, part of his inner life story, a kind of inner aspect. And one of the most striking thing in the autobiography of Steiner, as far as I have read it, I've read it several times, but for me it was quite often so striking that he's talking or writing all the time about the other ones, not about he himself. So the surrounding, the teachers, the friends, and especially or also if the friends were not so world important, he was so attentive. Or we can say the priority question is who are you, not who I am. But not all the time on the level of destiny, but also this radical interest in the other one. So going out from ourselves into the other and being completely interested in the other one. Also, if you read Steiner's letters, in German now we have a wonderful new edition from the Steiner archive. They bring all letters out, I think in 7 volumes. So I think the third is now coming, because what we knew before as Steiner's letters were a small selection in comparison what they have and found out. Incredible a lot of people and writing letters. Okay, no emails. This is good, but on the other side, this interested in the other one. It is all conversation and a radical interest in the other one, but also in his expression, in what he's reading, what he's doing, or also in the autobiographical writing of Steiner, how he is walking, or how he's behaving. And in the karma lectures, Dr. Steiner said, really, for karmic observation, it is just as important to be interested in a hand movement as in a brilliant spiritual gift. It is just as important to be able to observe naturally also from the spiritual side, according to the astral body and ego, how a person sits down as it is to be able to observe, let us say, how he fulfills his moral obligations. Quite often, if anthroposophists are interested in karma considerations, they look, so what are the important themes the other one is bringing, or what important books he published, or what spiritual insights he has, and they think, oh, he must be related to the school of Chartres, or some connections in this sense. But this is not how karma research is going. This is a kind of maybe karma speculation, or let's say reflection. But Steiner's own research, as expressed by the end result in the karma lectures, is the genuine interest in the other one's life, and really a kind of a selfless perception, an interest and love in the other one. There is one wonderful description of this ability of Steiner. I quoted it in some of my books. I really love this description from Friedrich Rittelmeyer. Maybe most of you will know Rittelmeyer, who was the first leader of the Christian community, Erzoberlenker, as the Germans say. And in one of the first meetings with Dr. Steiner, at this time Rittelmeyer was no anthroposophist, but he was interested in this man, this anthroposophist and philosopher Steiner, and he had a date with him. And this was in Nuremberg, where Rittelmeyer lived, and Steiner gave lectures and had a private room or a hotel room, I don't know exactly, but Rittelmeyer got the time of the appointment and went into the house. And then the description, I quote, "At the top of the half-open door stood Rudolf Steiner, who had just dismissed another guest, and watched me most attentively as I slowly climbed the stairs." So Steiner was first floor, Rittelmeyer came in and saw Steiner said just goodbye to another one and was standing outside the room, and so. And then Rittelmeyer went on, "I have never seen a person watch so attentively as he could. It was as if he, completely immobile but selflessly devoted, was allowing the other person to recreate himself, as it were, in a fine element of his own soul, which he offered him for this purpose. It was not a reflection on the other, but rather an inner spiritual reproduction in which the whole becoming of the other could be revealed." It's a very subtle description, isn't it? But he said more or less in my words, very simple, Steiner was not observing Rittelmeyer, but he was in such a selfless attitude in seeing that Rittelmeyer perceived it as a kind of Steiner offered his own element that Rittelmeyer could come or could be, could reveal himself. And to make it more primitive, a lot of people who met Steiner and talked to him, they felt very comfortable. Some of them said, at the beginning, I thought I'll coming to an initiate. And they came with a great tension. But then sitting next to Steiner in his studio or wherever they met him, some of them described, I felt so being at home in myself, in this free conversation. Or some of them said, I felt never so close to my inner I, myself, than in this conversation. I mean, we quite often experience the opposite, don't we? I mean, there is a conversation and we have to present ourselves, or we fell a little bit under pressure, or we try to be intelligent, but we are not. We try to be rhetorically brilliant, but we are not. So we are in an artificial situation. And maybe then going home, we felt that we were, it was an artificial product, not ourselves. But here the opposite. Rittelmeyer said, it was really me. And a revelation of the becoming of the other. There are a lot of stories also from the Waldorf school. Once Caroline von Heidebrand, a very good teacher, brought a boy to Steiner because she thought the boy needs assistance. I mean, in the class of Karl Schubert, where the children were who needed more assistance or soul care. And when the boy was brought to Steiner, he posed some questions, and the answers, they were all brilliant. And Steiner said to Heidebrand at the end, "Oh, it is enormously such a brilliant boy. Why did you bring him to me?" And she was so touched, because in a way he opened the button. In the class teachers, in the faculty, in the meeting with the teachers faculty, Steiner quite often mentioned this and said we should be able to open the button. Then the child is there, and but not only with the children. How to create an atmosphere where the becoming of the other is possible. But this has also to do with a kind of a destiny element. Steiner said in the lectures, those who observe people in order to unravel their previous lives on earth will certainly not reach their goal. Such observation must be felt as an insult inflicted on those being observed. So we are not at all allowed to observe the other one, but we are allowed to develop this deeper interest, this deeper deepening of love, this deepening of also social understanding. And if we go through the karma lectures, how Steiner is describing how he came to the point of a deeper understanding of some of these persons, it is quite often after a long research, a long, deeper experience of the other one. Also a kind of trying to find a point where you can understand a little bit more about the forces who were active in forming this body and this destiny. And this is not the content of what the other one is saying. It is more the movement of his hands and so on. So it's very interesting when Steiner describes his research in these lectures, and also saying it is a question of also to have the ability of thinking or perceiving metamorphosis, because karma means also a karma of metamorphosis. These are not repeated biographies. They transform in another. And you need a kind of an artistic element of perception to go deeper into this form. You know, from the Goethe-Ahnung building, we have the organic metamorphosis. But in a way, Steiner said, deepening the understanding of the Goethe-Ahnung building is also a big support in a deeper understanding of human biographies, or in a karma perception. Because this principle of metamorphosis, but that means connection which transforms through a kind of eternity, this has to do with this challenge. But then he also said we can do so many studies, but then we have to wait, and there must be a certain element of, how to say, he mentioned it, you have to prepare yourself for this insight, and then you can hopefully receive it more or less graciously. There is grace, in a way, from the spiritual world. You never can find it out as a scientist creates a result. But even in science, natural science on this side, I think there is an element of grace. But to prepare your work in this direction. And then also, and this has also to do with this ethical side of karma research, Steiner said, more and more, as far as you come farther and farther, and then you realize more or less that what is working in this metamorphosis in between one biography and the other one, these are the highest hierarchies. Basically, he said, quotation, one should look at the fate of a person with a tremendous inner reverence, with deep inner awe, because we're looking at the fate of a person, one stands before the whole world of the gods. Or in another sentence, actually, biographers should know that by reaching into a human life, even just to describe it, they reach into all hierarchies in an invisible way. So reach into all hierarchies. It is not easy if you have to write a biography, how to do it. But I think an important element is the ethical element. I don't think that biographers, they should all know about all hierarchies and they should have full insight in hierarchies, because then we would have less biographies. Maybe you say it is no problem if we have there are too many biographies now in the bookshops. But anyway, I think a deeper interest is essential. I'm glad that we have many biographies now in the bookshelves, in the bookshops. But you can distinguish in between those who are worked out with this kind of sense, with this kind of inner sense, that the biography is much more than what we can understand from the earthly interconnection. In a way, one biography is always a fragment. And this fragment, you never can understand it really from itself. Even if you don't write about unbornness and post-mortal life, it is the respect of this course of life which can be perceived in this. Maybe this to the first point, that is not going too long. The second point I mentioned before briefly is about why Steiner decided to give these karma lectures after the Christmas conference. I think most of you in the Faust branch, this is no mystery, no hidden mystery, that Steiner brought these lectures for the members of the Anthroposophical Society, and in fact only for the members of the Anthroposophical Christmas Conference Society. These were no public lectures to all persons who are interested in anthroposophy. No, it was to a certain group, the so-called members of the new founded Anthroposophical Society. Apart from a first lecture course which he gave in January 1924, called Anthroposophy, an introduction after 21 years. So these were the lectures in January. He started in mid of February, as we heard it, with the karma lectures. So it has to do with the society. In a much earlier lecture, Steiner said that the idea of reincarnation and karma could hold a group of people together. Maybe also the Anthroposophical Society. This is a first approach. We heard about the important role of bringing this idea to the world, or this reorganizational capacity of this idea for the societies of the future. And Steiner say only this thought or this perception, reincarnation and karma, could hold people together. So maybe if you think of the Anthroposophical Society, we are all very, very different. And what keeps us together? And Steiner said in several lectures, also before the Christmas conference, this could be a major element, especially in this ethical value, which I tried to underline in the first point. But this is not all, because knowing about reincarnation and karma is not enough. Also from the first anthroposophists, Steiner always hoped that they will bring this idea to the public, but also that they draw the consequences. Because if this is true, we need another education. If this is true, that every single child has a mission and has an unborn life before, and came with certain intentions, this will transform school education. Not in the sense of karma education, not in the sense that children should know who they are, but it is another teacher-child relationship. And also it will transform economical life, Steiner said. He said it quite early in 1905, long before the Christmas conference. He said, if this is true, that we come with missions, we can also say with work we have to do, then we can't be paid. In a way, he's saying, and he said it really in this radical way, the payment of work is the most horrifying tool to destroy the perception of karma. If people only work because of the salaries, because they needed the money, and this is also the reason why they took a job, this is destroying karma. This is a very radical thought, because our whole economy, our whole business life is based on salaries. And it is so conventional, so self-evident for all children that they work because they are paid. This is quite often now the end result of an education, that we have to find a job to get the salary. And I think most of you know that Steiner brought the idea that we shouldn't be paid for our work. We should, of course, we need money, and this money has to be given to us, but not for the product of our work. This should be free from it. Because then we can get more and more a perception what we have to do. And there is also work which has to be done without salaries, but we have to live, we have to sustain our life. So it's just an example of this main social law Steiner brought in at the beginning of the 20th century, but just to show it has a practical consequence. But that's not all. And the astonishing thing is that Steiner, in the Karma lectures, but it's late, in July he starts, he's telling the Anthroposophical Society its own destiny. The destiny not of the individuals, but the destiny of the society as an entity. But this was not clear in February, March, April, May, June. It was only in July, after St. John's Day, when Steiner said, now I will come to the point to talk about the destiny of the society. I will come in the third point to it, in detail a little bit more. But it's clear that it has to do with the self-knowledge of the anthroposophical movement. Maybe you know there is a fragment drama too of Schiller. The one is about Demetrius and the other one about the Maltese. And the Maltese order is threatened, and in the play, but also in history, by the Turkish army. And they had no chance to win the Maltese order soldiers against this huge Turkish army. And Schiller then, in the play, but it remained a fragment, wanted to show how they overcame the huge Turkish army and how they did it, because they had a master, the Maltese, and he explained them their own history, their essence, their origin of the order, and their task in a historical time. A super sensible task. So it's very interesting. Maybe you have a chance to read it. And I published also a little booklet about this Maltese play of Schiller, but it's not in English, only in German, where Schiller said the precondition for overcoming the major power is to know where you are. As a group, in this case, as a group, the Maltese order had a group mission and a task. And this was revealed in 24 to the Anthroposophical Society, that the society has a task, a historical, a world evolution task. We can say Steiner started much earlier, of course. Most of you are experts of the mystery dramas. And you know, I think that the mystery dramas are not just a drama. All the actors were anthroposophists and the audience as well. So in a way, they played it for each other. And in the mystery dramas, this is a drama about, in four plays, about a reincarnating group. They have something to do in the future. Why Dr. Steiner brought the mystery dramas out? Of course, there are a lot of studies about it, but basically I would say for the awakening of the Anthroposophical Society. But this more or less did not happen. In the time of the mystery dramas, he gave a cycle about occult history. It was in the Holy Nights from 1911 to 12 in Stuttgart. It was at that time when the first foundation stone was laid for a branch house in Germany. So the Stuttgart branch was the one who first opened a house for anthroposophy. No Rudolf Steiner College, but just a house. Not as brilliant as Ferry Oaks, but a house in Stuttgart. And during this foundation stone laying activity, Steiner gave a course about occult history. And he started with Gilgamesh and Eabani. They did not understand at all why he came back to Babylon. He went back to Babylon, but he brought it. And you know that during the Christmas conference, in the evening lectures, he quoted several times from the Stuttgart lecture course. In fact, he had his transcript of the Stuttgart course on his desk during the Christmas conference. So he never said, I brought it so many years ago, but you had no clue, sorry. No, but in a way, the theme was there. And then the building process of the Goetheanum was an enormous process of awakening. And a lot of these co-workers, they had a feeling that they are not building together the first time a mystery site, or they are not the first time together. Asya Turgenev wrote wonderful memories, Albert Steffen. They never had a full insight, but they had a feeling that they prepare something not for the first time. So the theme of to get awake as a society, that we are not here by accident together, but we have something to do. It was clear, but it became clearer and clearer. And Steiner brought himself into the group. You know, from the mystery place, the word of Benedictus, our work, he's talking about our work, not your work, but our. Benedictus is far beyond Thomasius and the other ones, but he went in. And in the description of Steiner, interwoven with his own soul destiny into the soul experience of his students. Interwoven. What is doing Steiner in the Christmas conference? He's going in the society. He's sharing the destiny of the society. Then I am among you, he said. He said it not during the Christmas conference. He said it to Anna Samweber. Maybe you know her. This was the lady who lived with Dr. Steiner in the Berlin house. And some weeks before the Christmas conference, exactly in those days, 9th of November 23, when Hitler tried to get first time the power in Germany, in those days, Anna Samweber was from Berlin in Dornach, and she saw Berlin in fire, in a fiery destruction, in flames. She had a kind of a vision, and Steiner asked Steiner for support, if this will come. And Steiner gave her a meditation for the Berlin friends, when this will come. And then he said, and then I am with you. And this came more or less 21 years later, in 1944 and 45, at the end of Second World War, when Berlin was totally in flames. And Anna Samweber was still there with this meditation for the Berlin friends. And Steiner said, then I am with you. So in a way, he went into this society, and after he did it, this step of taking the chair, but this was not only a formal step, as you know, it was more or less a destiny step, that he now was really connected to the society on another level. Then he started to reveal the karma of the society. And there I come to the last point, the structure and composition of the karma lectures. And I want to say, if you start in mid of February and then going on to March and April, you see this is a long methodological path, progressing very thoroughly, slow. Steiner is really, he's building up. He's building up. It's interesting. He has a lot of patience. He's not at all directly going into the main theme and revealing the karma of people, but just saying what is necessary for an understanding of this fundamental and complicated law, the karma law. And this is the first lecture about causes in the mineral world, in the plant world, in the animal world, in human beings' world. So causality, or this kind of laws. And then he's going on to a kind of morphological approaches. What are types or regularities, metamorphosis and serial metamorphosis, proportions, in between biographies, also social configurations. I would say it's a Goetheanist approach to another type of law. We know the Goetheanistic approach to the growth of the plants or also the motions of the animals, but now a Goetheanistic approach to how is karma acting. Also in history, a Goetheanistic approach to historical development by human beings. And then he's going beyond how the hierarchies build up the karma during death and new birth. So how they form and shape and work. So it's a long, long, long development. But then, at the beginning of July, quite late, isn't it? From February, March, April, June, July. Then he's saying, so now, in shy reverence, he said in shy reverence, I want to face the topic, what underlies the anthroposophical community, karmically, what underlies it spiritually, cosmically. And now we can see it went in this direction. It was not the only purpose. I would say what Steiner is giving in all the lectures from February on, this is fundamental anthroposophy. What is a human being? It's one of the deepest lectures are the karma lectures about what is anthroposophy and what is a human being, also in history, in development. But then he's coming to the point with the society. And probably most of you know how he enters the theme. He enters the theme in saying there is an underlying experience of those in their biographies who were driven towards anthroposophy. A lot of people, hopefully we all tonight, we have this kind of affinity, we have this kind of strong intensity towards anthroposophy. Others don't have it. So this is quite a difference to our neighbors sometimes, or wherever you will live. Sometimes the neighbors are also anthroposophists, or in families, there are also huge difference. Your brother is not at all interested, and you feel it has to do with yourself. And the pre-event, Steiner said, was before the entry on earth. There was a soul union in the spiritual world. And then he describes, most of you know, what happened at the beginning of the 19th century, the first 4 decades. There was a group of souls and they met each other on their way to the earth. They were not all incarnating directly, but in a way, they concentrated there, and maybe it was in the moon sphere, or I don't know exactly. And Steiner said they did something together in preparing their mission or their task. And what they did was a kind of cosmic spiritual celebration. A cosmic spiritual celebration. They did something together that means it's not easy to describe. He said they wove together cosmic imaginations. They had not a teacher who did it or a priest on the altar. They did it together with the spirits of the upper hierarchies. And then he said, and what is the content of these imaginations? The new Christianity, or also the Son being of Christ. And they had something as a cult, which later on became teaching and actions, what we call anthroposophy. So they prepared. It was very shocking when he brought this in July, and obviously people who listened to him, they realized he's talking about us. We took part, obviously, in this kind of cult, in the spiritual world, and came with a certain intention. And some days later, and I just summarize at this point, he's coming to talk about the school of Chartres, and saying more or less, and this has a relation to Steiner's lectures before the Christmas conference about Ephesus, about the mystery sites of the pre-Christian time. He's saying more or less, in Chartres, in the 12th century, there was a culmination of a Platonic stream of wise souls. So the pupils of Plato, they came again in a way for a deeper understanding of Christianity after the mystery of Golgotha. So 12th century, a kind of a wonderful time of bringing together a spirit of Greece, mystery spirit of Plato, together with the Christianity of what happened at the turning point of time. And there was a wonderful school in Chartres near the cathedral, and they really worked more or less in images. So the teaching was full of images, was artistic, and with a new relationship to nature, but it was all this Plato element of a deeper understanding of reality, but now in the light of the Christ. And in the next century, the Dominicans came, and they were more or less inspired by Aristotle, the so-called pupil of Plato, and they had to incarnate intelligence deeper on earth. They were befriended, the Plato and the Aristotle stream or pupils, but they had a mission together. And the leaders of the school of Chartres, they realized, they knew that the next epoch will be led by the Aristotelian spirits who work less with images but more with a spiritual logic thinking. And so this image element had to withdraw, and this kind of spiritual logic element had to be predominant, but they worked together. And the one came and the other one left, and there was a deep, deep friendship. And Steiner described also how they came to a certain, after they both were left Earth in the 14th century, they again met each other in the spiritual world, and they knew that at the end of the 19th century, when the Michael age starts, they will come again. But then it will be necessary that the Aristotelian cells start with the impulse, and the Platonists take it over. So in a different following up. And for Steiner it was quite important, because this means, in fact, this is the group, both groups together, who prepared at the beginning of the 19th century in this cult what they have to do beginning at the end of the 19th century in the Michael age with the new Christianity. So the preparation in Middle Age, and then at the end of the 19th century, they come again in a different following up. So first the Aristotelian, and Steiner said because they knew, first of all, there was a scientific fight needed. And if this was partly won, the world of images, the artistic element could come, and the Aristotelians can come again together. So he's describing more or less, and this is really first time that he did, that he revealed the members of the society in which process they are taking part. This was absolutely astonishing at this point. This was mid of July, and the theme went on. And there could have been open. There are many questions. They were open still, but the question, what about Plato, he himself, was one of the remaining questions. Aristotle, Steiner talked about the entity of Aristotle. He started in this lecture course about occult history. He went on with the theme in the Christmas conference. So this was well revealed. But Plato, I mean, he never said that Plato was part of the school of Chartres. He was the hidden spirit. But what about him? And in fact, this was the last Karma lecture. This is quite interesting that he really said that he will now finish this course in the 23rd of September 1924. And in the center is Plato and his own teacher, Carl Julius Schröer. So this was one of the most striking, I think, elements Steiner brought in the Karma lectures to talk about Plato and Schröer. And Plato, that means a person, as Steiner described, who was connected with all mysteries. Almost all wisdom of his time was in his teaching. The spirituality was refined to ideas. It was a kind of spiritual love, devotion to the world, to the gods. And this individuality, a major figure of human history, what about him in the future? And Steiner described in this lecture that it was very difficult for Plato to reincarnate, because he was really Greek. And Greek with an Oriental element, Steiner is saying. He also said a Persian element also. And now this kind of Romanism and Christianity was, in a way, for Plato, very difficult as a culture. And he couldn't go in. And so in the 10th century, there was only one incarnation as a nun in Middle Europe, as a very important nun, but it was in a way not a full Plato. And in the 19th century, when the decisive battle starts of Michael with Ahriman, what about him, Plato? And Steiner said it was very difficult for Plato to go into this intellectual culture. It was a kind of a shock. It was really a kind of a shock. But he was born, he said. He was born in 1825, 11th of January, in a city called Pressburg. Today it is Bratislava. First child of his parents in a region, German, Hungarian, Slovakian, a region German-speaking since the 13th century, but now politically part of Hungary, Pressburg, an important city from a spiritual point of view. Napoleon has been there, but also Caspar Hauser and the Holy Elizabeth. He grew up in a family of Goethe admirer. And this is important because Steiner said the late Plato had a deep relationship to an artist, to a young artist who later became Goethe. Goethe's individuality was never part of the philosophical academy of Plato, but the gaze of Plato was directed to go to this individuality of this young artist with full respect for this individuality. Now, back to Pressburg, the family Schröer was totally devoted to Goethe. Father Schröer was an important author. Tobias Gottfried Schröer visited Goethe in Weimar in 1803, but also Schiller and Wieland. And the whole family lived in Goethe's world. So the holiest day of the family Schröer was not the Christmas day, but it was the 28th of August, Goethe's birthday. And when Goethe died in 1832, you are in the branch, in the Faust branch, you know it. This was a shock for the family and also for the boy, who was 7 years old. He had Greek talents, I would say, the boy. Schröer, Carl Julius Schröer, he was extremely gifted in mathematics and Greek language. His major theme to study was Goethe and the Greek in his puberty. And he was writing in hexameters. There was a lot to tell about this, but it's not our main thing. In 1843, when he was 18 years old, he went to study Leipzig, of course, and Halle, so this region of Germany, and philosophy, theology. And then visited, of course, Weimar, 1844. Visited Eckermann, this closest friend of the late Goethe, and it was 12 years after his death. Probably you have also friends who died 10 or 12 years before. It is sometimes as yesterday. So 10 years ago, Sergei Prokofiev died, 26th of July. It is 10 years now, but what does it mean, 10 years? And in a way, it is still present. So 12 years after Goethe died, Schröer, Carl Julius Schröer, Steiner's teacher, was in Weimar visiting Eckermann. And what Eckermann wanted is that this young student is reading poems of Goethe for him, the old Eckermann. A very strange element that he, as a visitor, had to read Goethe for the old Eckermann. It's a very nice story, but this student had problems to know what to do now. It was a dreamy state of being related to. He was also an extreme left-hander, a phenomenon, Steiner said, of karmic weakness. Maybe not in all cases, but he said it once, that left-handed is a certain hesitation in a way. He felt distant, this young student, to politics, to what was going on in modern life, mid of 19th century, culmination of natural science, euphoria, utopias of natural science future. But he felt, the holiest day was Goethe's death day. He was writing poems about Goethe. He went back to where he grew up, and as his own father became a teacher for German literature and Goethe, of course, and German language, he discovered this place of Oberufer 7 years before Steiner was born. He heard that there are places in Oberufer. Oberufer was a little village in the surrounding of Pressburg. Now it's all Bratislava. If you go to Bratislava and find out where Oberufer is, it's in the middle of the town, more or less, with skyscrapers. Only on the cemetery there, you can find the names of the players of the Oberufer plays. If you know from Schröer the names, I knew the names from Schröer, also the playing master, David Malatic, At this time, you could find them on the cemetery. So he realized that they were a very old place, Christian place, and he went to see them. And then he was working a lot for bringing this place back to the public. He published them in Vienna when he was 33 years old, the Oberufer place. And in January 1861, he became director of the Protestant schools in Vienna. So Steiner incarnated in February, and in January, Schröer moved to Vienna and became, as you heard, director of the Protestant schools. I mean, the main schools in Vienna are Catholic, but they have some Protestant schools. And he was the director. And it was just a building, and it is still, the building is still there next to the technical high school, where Steiner came 18 years later to start with his studies. The next door. And it's very interesting what he did there, Schröer, and this as a director, and what kind of method of teaching, very much related to Waldorf education, but this is not my theme now. And then he became also lecturer in literature on the technical high school. And there Steiner met him in his first week. When he started to study there, Schröer gave a course about Schiller's life and works. And he met him. And in a way, it was extraordinary because the technical high school became more or less an engineer school. But Schröer was a fragment or a remnant of the past. And partly they didn't take him for serious. He was a little bit extraordinary why he was there at all. But for Steiner, it was enormously, because this man brought Goethe and Schiller, and during his lectures, he was reading their texts. And he was inviting Steiner at home. And Steiner said, if I was sitting next to him, there was always a third person. This was Goethe. In a way, he was almost there. And also he was reading out of the Christmas plays, and very interesting. In 1882, so in the third years of Steiner's studies, it was the 50th death day of Goethe. He gave a lecture, Professor Schröer, about the coming view of Goethe, saying there will be a coming time of resurrection of Goethe. Goethe is now more true and alive than during his lifetime, and especially his importance for the future of science will be revealed. And Schröer then organized that Steiner is becoming the one to reveal this scientific spirit of Goethe's natural science. Maybe a last word about this, and then I come to a conclusion. Schröer also founded the so-called Vienna Goethe Society. And in this Vienna Goethe Society, Steiner gave his first lectures about Goethe and aesthetics. And in this lecture, or in a conversation after the lecture with a monk, Steiner became first a perception of his own past in the Dominican period. It was after this lecture, in a conversation with Professor Neumann, Cistercienser monk. And another lecture he gave there in the Goethe Society was about Goethe's fairy tale. And later on he described that in this fairy tale, these were images of this cultus of the Michael movement. What I wanted to say is that in this atmosphere of this Plato, who was only partly incarnated in this Schröer, he could not really incarnate, Steiner said. But Schröer had this kind of spirit, not fully, but in a way it was related. This Aristotelian stream could start, making anthroposophy true in the 20th century, or fulfill the mission of the Michael community. At the end of the lecture, Steiner saying, by this karmic consideration, we can understand the course of world history in reality. Schröer couldn't do the next step, which is spiritualization of the intellect. He got a shock by intellectualism, but Steiner could do it. So it's very interesting that Steiner ends this serial of lecture with his own teacher. Not all I have said now is in the lecture. If you go again to the book, it is not so much in the lecture about the family and about the father and about, but there are other publications about Schröer. But it's obvious that he's coming to this Plato challenge. So I tried to bring a first presentation, I would say, to these lectures. And yeah, I hope that we got a certain appreciation of Steiner's, the dignity of the thought, reincarnation and karma, but also the dignity of our society, having in itself this Michael mission, and insofar also in the center of the society, the School for Spiritual Science, which has the task to bring anthroposophy in medicine, education, and so on, as a school, as a university, doing research and teaching, and with a spiritual schooling path, which is the theme of the next lecture. And in the end, the third point, this hope that anthroposophy can be gain its full size if the Aristotelian and the Plato elements come together. And it was very interesting what Steiner brought as a historical point, and then how it started in Steiner's own biography, how then the Aristotelian part of the beginning anthroposophy was so dominant cognitively, and Steiner's hope that a century later, beginning maybe at the end of the 20th century, a time will come where they come together. This more Aristotelian spiritual cognitive ability together with this artistically full of images world relationship. Yeah, maybe until this point, now with my description, I'm sure you need recovery, but if you want, we can share some impressions of what you heard. And I know that for most of you, it's not at all a new, but I think if we bring such an image in the center of our community, in listening, in thinking, sometimes we find new things in old knowledge. That means I would be interested to hear what you experienced in listening and reflecting about it. And I know that it was only a little glimpse of what we call the karma lectures, but better than nothing, hopefully. Thank you for your long patience. We are over the time, but Steiner needed 7 months and it was only 1 hour and 20 minutes. So thank you.